Hi, everyone. I'm Sean Slevin, the founder of Swim Strong Foundation. It's great to be with you today, albeit remotely, and I'm so excited to share my presentation with you. So let's jump right into it. Swim Strong Foundation has been founded in 2006. It is a 501c3 with a mission to reduce unintended drowning and water-based accidents. Prior to the pandemic, we taught more than 10,000 students from age 3 to seniors how to swim. We gave more than $1 million in free swim lessons to families in need. We developed environmentally focused water safety educational programming, Know Before You Go, KNOW, Before You Go, which has been taught in 24 schools to over 13,500 students, and initiated legislation in New York State, which at the heart of it will mandate that schools grades pre-K through 12 in New York State mandate the training of water safety as part of their curriculum. My ask of you today is to reconsider how you think about water safety. And while I will be speaking from the experiences I have had in my own home here in New York City, I know that similar situations are going on all over the country. According to the World Bank, rising ocean levels immediately put 700 million of the world's population at risk of catastrophic flooding, especially in coastal cities, with elevations of 30 feet or less above ocean level. Much of New York City is below that 30-foot threshold. 10 years ago, Superstorm Sandy caused $60 billion in damage to New York and New Jersey. Water filtration plants, sewage treatment plants, and other critical infrastructure were destroyed. The National Guard had to be deployed to evacuate trapped, elderly, and infirmed people in nursing homes. FEMA and other local communication networks became inoperable. And yet, still today, we are ill-prepared for the next severe weather-related disaster. A recent FEMA national survey on disaster preparedness shared with families and individuals highlights the lack of preparation for an emergency and the role that income plays in readiness levels of emergency supplies to address the potential natural or man-made emergency. It also shows an over-reliance on the belief that first responders will be able to answer every call for help during an emergency. That's an absolute impossibility. The American Red Cross found that households and individuals with incomes of $50,000 or higher were more likely to have disaster supplies in their cars and homes, a household disaster plan, and experience volunteering during a disaster. They were also more likely to have taken a preparedness training or CPR course, communicated the importance of preparation to somebody else, and believed that preparedness would actually help them handle a disaster situation. Conversely, those with lower household incomes were less likely to have taken preparedness measures and indicated an increased need for help in an evacuation. Individuals with lower household incomes were less likely to have taken preparedness measures over the past 6 months, and they were more likely to cite cost as a barrier to preparing than were those with higher incomes. 10 years ago, New Yorkers watched Hurricane Sandy, which was billed as a once-in-a-lifetime event, devastate our city and the entire Northeast. In 2017, we saw Hurricane Harvey batter Louisiana and Texas, becoming the costliest tropical storm in recorded history. And then we watched only weeks later as Hurricane Maria claimed the lives of nearly 3,000 in Puerto Rico. Increasingly, these extreme weather events are the new normal, part of an undeniable climate crisis that stretches across our entire nation, from droughts in the Southwest to raging wildfires on the West Coast to flooding on the East Coast. Climate change is not a far-off threat. It is here, and it is taking lives. It poses a grave threat to our people and our city, and its costs will not be borne equally. More recently, we discovered that remnants of storms, even traveling from thousands of miles away, can be as devastating as those aimed directly at our city. For the first time in history, the National Weather Service declared a flash flood emergency in New York City. Ida shattered the record for the most single-hour rainfall in our city, set only 2 weeks earlier by another extreme storm, Hurricane Henri, which flooded streets, subways, and homes. We need to be prepared not only for storm surge in coastal areas, but rainfall inland as well. Think of the impact Tropical Storm Ida had on the tri-state this past September. 91 lives were lost between New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Connecticut. 13 of those people were my own neighbors who drowned in their basements in my hometown of Woodside, Queens. Ida destroyed homes, flooded areas across highways and roads. 150,000 homes were without power in southern New Jersey. F3 tornado from the remnants of Ida brought winds of over 150 miles per hour, which destroyed dozens of homes in the Lehigh Valley in Pennsylvania. Rivers and storm flooding continued over 48 hours, with up to 8 inches reported in some areas. In New Jersey, the Passaic River breached its banks and displaced fish and other wildlife into the middle of streets. In Newark, New Jersey, Ida dumped 3.24 inches of water between 8 and 9 in the evening. That shattered the hourly record that was set in 2006 by an inch. All of these impacts are reminders that our region and nation are confronting a new reality with extreme weather, both in scale and frequency. Ida underscored the need for collaboration and planning across state and city lines, along with significant aid and resources from state and federal government to prepare and protect our communities from these extreme events. During the storm, the New York Police Department conducted 166 rescues, including 60 water rescues. They helped to remove more than 800 passengers from our New York subway trains. The fire department conducted more than 500 rescues on flooded roadways, submerged cars, subway stations, and buildings, including deep watering operations in key buildings across New York City. After the storm, 1,000 vehicles were towed. New York City Emergency, FEMA, and the United States Division of Homeland Security and Emergency Services conducted joint preliminary damage assessments, resulting in the president to declare that all 5 boroughs of New York City were a major disaster area. Initial damage from Ida is expected to be far in excess of $38 million. And that excludes private insurance claims. Ida was likely the most destructive extreme rainfall event in New York City history. The New York City Panel on Climate Change anticipates by the end of the century that New York will experience 25% more annual rainfall, 25% more annual rainfall than today. The intensity of rainfall is increasing and more water is falling in a shorter period of time. These cloudburst events can and do exceed the capacity of our New York City sewer systems, which were built well over 100 years ago. As a result, there's been implementation of mandatory evacuations of inland basement apartments for flooding risk, with notice coming at least 6 hours in advance of the event, increased travel bans, including shelter-in-place orders when forecasts indicate fresh flooding. warning signs to drivers on over 100 flood-prone roadways, and past events like Superstorm Sandy, which devastated our coastlines. Now we understand that inland communities are also facing this growing danger and, of course, the need to protect both lives and property. Quite frankly and simply, we can no longer avoid water. Please understand that New York City has not been completely blind to the changes in water levels and increasing strength and frequency of storms. For the past several years, work has been going on in our harbor to mitigate storm surge. Groins are being built in the Rockaways to similarly soften the storm's impact. Also, building codes are now regulating that building must be built up in flood zones. In other words, no longer can they be built flat onto the shore. And all of this sounds great, right? But where is the protection for the most valuable and vulnerable resources of our city? Our citizens, right? Swim Strong Foundation provides this part of the solution. On a practical basis, we understand that not everybody will learn how to swim. However, everyone can learn about the dangers that water represents inside our own homes to everywhere we need it out of doors and throughout all of our seasons year-round. If we understand the nature of water and how it's manifested in different environments, we can make the proper decisions which will lead us to be safe in, on, and around the water. We can educate people to understand the danger of water and the risks they will take if they choose to go in it. In the fall, we have hurricane season, which makes our rip currents so much more lethal, even from storms happening over 1,500 miles away. Every winter, we rescue people who fall through the ice. Sadly, not all survive. And in the spring, of course, now we have flooding and the need to understand when it's not safe to cross water on our roads and streets. We even have this new phenomenon called sunny day flooding, which has absolutely nothing to do with rainfall, nor have anything to do with a storm. It has everything to do with these supermoons. These supermoons create super tides. And so what's happening is that the tide is coming up, it hits the high tide level and exceeds that level. But in many cases, there frankly is no place for that water to go. So it's forced up onto roadways and streets that previously had always been dry. So New York City dwellers have really seldom, if ever, had to deal with flooding in the normal course of our lifetimes. Now we are going to need to learn an entirely new set of skills. We're also under a triple threat. For the past dozen years, our water levels have been rising 1 to 1.5 centimeters per year. Our tropical storms and hurricanes are not only becoming more intense, but the frequency and sheer numbers are increasing every year. Frankly, for the last 2 years, we've had to go to the Greek alphabet to continue to name the storms. Our waterfronts are being developed as never before in our lifetimes, opening access to open water dramatically to millions of people who cannot swim and do not understand the danger and the nature of the type of water that they are around. As a result, I'm so concerned that our drowning rates and water-based accidents will increase dramatically. We need to acknowledge that our world is becoming much more watery. We need to understand water conditions very differently. In fact, we need a new relationship with the water. Our families need to understand that water safety and swimming skills are as important as buckling up your seatbelt when you get into an automobile. Since the onset of COVID, many of our public beaches and pools have been closed due to lack of staffing and, of course, the pandemic. That has not, however, deterred our citizens from seeking out other areas in which to swim. In most cases, those would not be designated safe swimming areas. Frankly, New York City is an aquatics desert as it comes to having appropriate number of multi-use swimming pools, which can be used to teach a wide range of swimming skills, from learn to swim through lifeguard and specialty skills. One could reasonably argue that with the lack of appropriate public swimming pools, meaning not wading or sprinkler pools, we should be looking to set up safe swimming areas along our riverfronts, bays, lakes, etc. Safe access to water is critical for our mental and physical health. SwimStrong believes that education is the key to learning water safety. We initiated legislation to mandate the training of water safety in our New York State schools, grades pre-K through 12. The bills are noted here as 2207 in the Senate and A 728 in the New York Assembly. If you live in New York State, please do advocate for the passing of these bills by reaching out to your local senator and assembly members and urging them to become co-sponsors of these bills. Again, if you live in New York State, you can show your support by completing the action alert, which is noted here on this slide, the bit.ly link here. And whether or not you are in New York as an organization in or out of New York, you can show your support by filling out the organizational letter of support for organizations. Please, please, we ask that you add your voices to ours to help pass this life-saving legislation. Prior to the legislation, SwimStrong developed an environmentally focused water safety training program, Know Before You Go, back in the end of 2017. What's different about this program is that it qualifies that swimming skills and water safety knowledge are not one and the same thing, but rather they complement each other, particularly against the backdrop of this increasingly more watery world and our new environment. Water safety is the knowledge and understanding of the difference in nature, behavior, and dangers of different bodies of water as they compare to one another and seasonally year-round. It also addresses all wild weather situations that we've been experiencing. Swimming skills are physical skills, which make us effective and efficient in the water. Ideally, we would have water safety knowledge before learning swimming skills, and we would be taught both in our youth. While they do complement each other, even people who do not learn to swim must have access to water safety training. Remember my 13 neighbors in Woodside? Those people would not have drowned had they had our training. So please do talk to me about our programs that you can share with your Learn to Swim families, with your competitive swim team families, with your school, civic, church families. All of us, whether we're swim skilled or not, need this training.